Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. It's time again for another update to my media journal. This video was supposed to be up 2 months ago, but I was down with a cold and wasn't feeling my best. And lately I've been feeling really uninspired, so this video has been delayed longer than intended. But for now, let's start with the cover page for May. For this month's cover page, I'm keeping the same vibes as my previous cover pages. I'm guessing I will continue with this style for the next few months or so. But anyway, I think this paper is from the same set of origami papers I got from Daiso. I cut along the pattern in the top third and bottom third of the paper using my decal edge scissors and paste the cutouts on opposite corners of the spread. The washi tape I'm using is the Bold Rainbow Blue washi from Exo Mama Plans. May was a much better month for me compared to April. I managed to complete 11 dramas this month, and 6 of those are dramas that were finishing their run in May. I also ended up including this Heart and Vine washi from Simply Gilded at the sides. But anyway, out of the 5 shows I binge watched, 2 of them are actually 2 seasons of the same show, so I ended up combining them into one spread, which you will see later. May was not only a good month because I managed to complete more shows, but it also had a higher than usual average rating of 8.14 out of 10. There were a couple of shows that I rated 9 out of 10, and one show has the highest rating so far at 9.5. But there were also shows on the other end of the spectrum, which means they were not very good. I don't know why, but for some reason I felt the cover page had a lot of white space, so I ended up pasting my star rating stickers underneath each poster instead of writing the number for the ratings this time round. I'm not too sure if I like how it looks, given that I have to refer to my star rating guide each time I want to check the actual rating, but I guess only time will tell if I prefer having the star ratings over the number ratings. But now that we have all the star ratings filled in, let's move on to the first show I completed in May. The poster for this show has a purple background, so I'm using a plain purple construction paper for the decoration this time round. I made a mistake while writing down the title, so I'm just covering that up with a piece of offcut. I feel like I made a ton of mistakes while setting up this spread. I don't know what happened, but I was just out of it when working on this month's spreads. I initially put down this purple iridescent tape from Daiso at the sides, as well as the clear purple foil magical mouse washi from Exo Mama Plans at the top and bottom of the spread. But then I realized that this show is about ghosts, and I should have used my ghost related washi tapes instead, because when else will I be able to use my Halloween washi tapes apart from spooky season? So I ended up using the cute Ghost Friends purple washi from Simply Gilded at the top of the spread, as well as one of the Haunted Houses Pinks Purples washi tapes at the bottom. The deco stickers are from a combination of Halloween themed collections from Simply Gilded. As mentioned, this show is about ghosts, and specifically it is about a photo studio that is for ghosts. The photographer in charge of these ghost photos is Kiju, played by Juwon. He inherited this generational curse from his ancestors that came before him. I think it was mentioned quite early on in the show what the curse entails, but I won't share it here in the voiceover to avoid spoilers. Anyway, Kiju meets a lawyer Hanbom, played by Kwanara, who somehow ends up helping him resolve the ghost client's issues. The studio has 2 other employees who have backstories of their own. From the premise, I didn't expect much from this show. It sounded too similar to other ghost shows that came before it, like Hotel de Luna, Sell Your Haunted House, Delivery Man, and from now Showtime, just to name a few, which essentially feed off the living helping the dead to cross over to the afterlife premise popularized by Ghost Whisperer. While there were a couple of case of the week stories I enjoyed in this show, I felt it didn't bring anything new to the table in this genre. This show just felt like a rehash of shows I've already watched previously. I was also quite disappointed that around the halfway point, the show decided to focus more on the romance aspect. I expected there to be some romance, but I didn't expect it to be front and center. I felt the romance slowed down the pacing of the show quite a bit, and how the leads are connected felt way too coincidental. It also didn't help that I find Kwanara to be bland whenever she's on screen. She always gets overshadowed by her co-stars, and for some reason she always feels like the weakest link, and it's no exception here. Lee Bom Sori, who played her best friend, outshined her in every way despite being a supporting character. Maybe that's why I was more interested in the second lead's romance more than the leads. In the end, I gave this show 8 out of 10. It was decent but not different and entertaining enough compared to other similar shows. Speaking of different premises, this next show is quite different from others. horrendous, though I'm not sure if they executed it properly. Both posters for this show are primarily turquoise, but I somehow don't have any turquoise colored paper, so I ended up going with this green inkstrop paper since there are some hints of turquoise. I'm pairing it with this vintage scrapbook paper with some scribbles on it because one of the leads is a mystery writer and I guess his manuscripts will look like that. Also, I try to justify my choices. Anyway, I cut the vintage paper into 4 using my zigzag scissors and paste the strips on each corner of the spread. I mentioned about making mistakes throughout this video, and what do you know? Here comes my mistake now. Usually, if I'm unsure of the spacing, I'll start writing from the middle so that the word will be centered. But somehow I didn't do that for the word uncovered and now it looks horrendous. So I'm rewriting it on a piece of offcut from the same paper, and if you're wondering why the word looks thinner than usual, it's because I use a new marker instead of my old one because I somehow managed to misplace the old one 1 minute after putting it down, only to find it right there all along. The stickers which you will see later are from the Emerald Botanical Subbox since they are the same shade of deep turquoise like the posters. This poster in particular is quite misleading. I remember seeing someone comment that they thought this show was about a threesome thanks to this poster, but the actual plot could not be far from it. Oh, by the way, this washi tape I'm using at the sides is a random tape I got from Shopee. So Nothing Uncovered is about So Jong-won, an investigative journalist who is known for uncovering the misdeeds of powerful figures like politicians and such. In terms of her personal life, she's married to an equally famous mystery writer, Uze, who is also a chaebol. They seem to be a very happy couple, but the truth is their marriage wasn't approved by his dad and that Uze is actually hiding something from her. One day, Jong-won gets involved in an incident or two or more incidents rather, and through those incidents, she is reunited with her ex-lover played by Yeon Woo-jin, who is the detective in charge of investigating those incidents. So the show is basically about these 3 people and how they are connected to those incidents. Even though the other poster released for the show is depicting them in bed together, this is actually not about a 3-way relationship. Apart from that, I'm not too sure where to start from for this show. I got so frustrated while watching this, and I'm kind of surprised I managed to complete it somehow. So Jong-won is supposed to be this badass reporter who doesn't care about the consequences of exposing powerful people as long as she reports the truth, and so you would think she's somewhat smart, right? But no, she is the dumbest person I've ever seen. Due to the nature of her work, she would know the importance of evidence and avoid contaminating it, but no, she manages to contaminate not 1 but 2 crime scenes, and then gets shocked when she is singled out as the prime suspect because the fingerprints are all over the place. Be for real, she is so freaking dumb. To make it worse, I don't think Kim Han-woo is a great actress either. She has been in many dramas for more than 20 years. You would think she knows how to act, but she is so expressionless here, like she's not even doing the bare minimum. I did like Yeon Woo-jin in Daily Dose of Sunshine, but it feels like a waste for him to be in this show. The mystery was also lackluster. I can't even remember what it was about in the end, and I couldn't care less about the romance either. Overall, I ended up giving this 7 out of 10, only because I was being kind, which is the case for this next show as well. Turquoise posters must have been really popular lately because this show also has mainly turquoise posters. I cut this turquoise gingham pattern paper using my dagger edge scissors before pasting them in opposite corners of the spread because this show is a Disney Plus original. I am using the Magical Mouse washi tape in Deadly Nightshade from Exo Mama Plants, and I picked this washi because the color is quite similar to the color on the poster. For some reason, I thought I remembered the show talk about milk, so I thought I could use some of my milk stickers from Simply Gilded, but I watched a recap video and saw nothing about milk being mentioned. Like maybe there was something about raw meat, but nothing specifically about milk, so that's why you will see some random deco stickers instead. If you're wondering why I keep talking about cows and milk and meat, it's because this show is about cultured meat, or rather it's about the market leader in the cultured meat industry, BF, which I think stands for blood free. There is a major incident at the company which also puts the life of the CEO, played by Han Hyo-ju, in jeopardy, and they're trying to find out who is targeting them and why. At the same time, Han Hyo-ju meets Ju Ji-hoon, who is formerly in the military, and he ends up being her bodyguard. I think that's basically the premise of this show. Honestly, I'm not too sure what this show is meant to be about. There were a lot of storylines being introduced within a short amount of time. It has only 10 episodes, but there were like 101 things happening at once. The company, BF, produces cultured meat, but then they also bring up cultivating organs for things like transplants. I feel like the show tried to focus on too many aspects. Like, of course, there's the science behind cultivating organs along with the ethical concerns, but suddenly there is a political angle with politicians such as Lee Hee-jun's character wanting to get involved for personal gain. There is also a backstory involving Jo Ji-hoon and his military background, and all of this is being crammed into 10 episodes. I ended up feeling confused and losing interest in the show. They should have just focused on the cultured meat aspect, especially since there's already a lot of debate about it in terms of ethical and health implications. For example, introducing the idea of cultured organs just opens a whole new can of worms. With even more ethical and legal considerations, it feels like the show was overly ambitious, and strangely enough, the writer's previous drama, Grid, was also too ambitious but was not executed well. I've seen many people say just trust the writer, trust the process, because they wrote Stranger, but I was bored by that show too, even though it was mostly decent. So yeah, maybe I'm just not a fan of this writer. Overall though, I gave this a 7 out of 10, mainly because I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, but honestly I would have dropped this if it weren't only 10 episodes. Although I don't think this will stop me from watching sci-fi shows, because this next show is actually pretty good. Based on the title of this show, you might expect some grey papers as decoration, but unfortunately I don't have any grey paper. So we're going with the next best thing, which is black paper. And there are some black spots in the poster, so I guess that matches. The washi tape I'm using is the cashmere bow from Simply Gilded, just to bring out the grey tones in the posters. As usual, I'm using an Archer and Olive acrylograph for the title, as acrylic markers are the only ones that show up well on black paper. This one in particular is one of the 2 colors that I actually use, just because the rest don't work as well for me. You can see how much trouble I've had with the acrylograph in my March media journal video. But I recently bought a new set of acrylic markers, and you will see those in action in my upcoming June media journal video. Anyway, Parasyte the Grey is based on the Parasyte manga series. While I've heard about the 2 live action movies here and there, I have not watched them myself, and I'm not familiar with the source material. Based on my understanding though, I believe this show is more of a prequel than a direct adaptation of the manga. It is set in the same world as Parasyte and explores the concept of parasitic organisms that take humans as hosts, taking over their body and brain. This show focuses on 3 main characters, each with their own agenda. The first character is Suin, played by John Sonny, who is infected by a parasite. However, instead of the parasite fully taking over her brain, they end up coexisting, with the parasite living in her subconscious. The next character is Kang-woo, who is not infected by the parasites, but he is on a mission to hunt down the parasites in hopes of finding his missing sister. And lastly, we have Choi Jun-kyung, who is the leader of the police parasite task force. She is hell-bent on finding and eliminating all the parasites after losing her husband to one. There is also a parasite cult storyline, and I remember the church of the cult was gated, so that's why I used the gate sticker from the Simply Gilded Wednesday deco sheet at the bottom of the spread, along with other stickers from the same sticker sheet. I was quite skeptical going into this show because I saw that the main showrunner is Yeon Sang-ho, who was behind Train to Busan, Hellbound and Monstrous. Out of those 3, only Train to Busan was decent, while the other 2 were really horrendous. He also wrote The Bequeath, which I enjoyed, but he wasn't the main showrunner for that, so I was a bit wary, especially since the first 3 shows, as well as Parasyte, had similar zombie apocalyptic vibes. But I still wanted to give this show a chance since it's only 6 episodes. To my surprise, this show was actually entertaining and I really liked it. I liked that they went straight into the story instead of spending too much time explaining how the parasites work. Even if you're not familiar with the source material, you can still understand what's happening. Though I'm not sure if it's because I took a university level course on host microbe interactions, so I kinda already know how parasites work. I thought the interaction between Suin, Kang-woo and the parasite was quite funny. Like, they even gave the parasite a name, Heidi. There were some parts of the show that felt a bit too depressing though, because given the premise, you know something bad will happen to some of the characters. But I thought 6 episodes were just enough to flesh out the storyline and provide a complete ending without setting up for a potential second season. Which reminds me, if you're watching this, please stay for the post-credits scene. Overall, I give this show 8.5 out of 10. It was a short and succinct show that managed to keep me interested from the beginning to end. That is not the case for this next show though, which started out okay but did not end on a good note. Apparently, we are all about making mistakes and changing our minds throughout this video. I initially wanted to use this blue and orange paper from the Inkstrop set, but changed my mind and used the blue and orange construction papers instead, and I thought that would be my final decision for the decoration. Until I wrote down the title and made a mistake of not measuring the space I need again. So I ended up going a different route. Instead of sticking with the same paper combination, I finally decided decided on this orange origami paper from Daiso, which is inspired by Japanese art. Since this show is mainly about Japanese folklore, I thought the paper fits the theme of the show perfectly. To be honest, this is actually my second attempt, or I guess third, at writing the title, but this time I was smart enough to write it down on paper first before sticking it onto my notebook in case of any mistakes. Technically, this show consists of 2 seasons, but I decided to combine both seasons into one spread since I watched them consecutively. Since the second season's poster is mostly blue, I'm using the September Soiree floral bow washi to complement it. I'm pasting a variety of bird stickers as decoration. Because one of the Japanese folklores the show explores involves tengu, which are supernatural creatures often depicted with bird-like features such as beaks or wings. The reason there is a lot of Japanese folklore in this show is that the main character, Naoya, is studying it at university. I'm not sure if it is his major or if it's just one of his courses, but through this class, he meets the titular associate professor Akira, and they end up solving mysterious cases involving Japanese folklore and superstitions. Season 1 focuses more on Naoya's backstory. He experienced something when he was a child and developed the ability to detect lies. The second season explores more of Akira's mysterious past. Shows that uncover the truth behind supernatural phenomena are actually my favorite genre, so naturally I was drawn to this show. Previous shows debunking supernatural occurrences have done so through magic tricks and physics, but this show takes a fresh approach by explaining them through psychology. Like Akira explains in one episode how people tend to associate a mysterious phenomenon with a superstition or urban legend they have recently heard, which is a concept tied to recency bias. I also appreciated the blend of cases, with some deeply rooted in Japanese folklore and others based on universally familiar superstitions or urban legends. That said, I find the stark differences between the 2 seasons a bit jarring. I'm not sure if it's because they were aired on 2 different broadcasting networks. Season 1 follows a case of the week format where each episode introduced a new folktale, which I enjoyed, whereas Season 2 shifts to focus on a single overarching storyline, which was okay at first, but it dragged on for too long and was a letdown when the truth was finally revealed. It also felt incomplete as it did not delve into Akira's past in the same way they did with Naoya in Season 1. In the end, I rated this show as a whole, considering both seasons, giving it an 8 out of 10. While this show spanned 2 seasons to tell its story, the next show is based on a complete drama series. One of the posters for this show has brown undertones to give it a vintage look, which seems fitting for a show set in 1958. I cut the picture from one of my vintage scrapbook papers to match the vibe of the show for the left side of the spread, while using the part with scribbles for the right side. I'm also using the rejected pieces of the inkstrop paper from the previous spread to pair with the vintage pieces, since half of the second poster for the show has a blue background. The sepia tone part is actually a picture taken from the original series. So Chief Detective or Susah Banjang was a long-running police procedural that aired in the 70s and 80s, which starred Choi Bul-am as the titular character Park Yong-han. Chief Detective 1958 serves as a prequel, set during a time where Park Yong-han was not yet the chief detective, but a small-town detective newly transferred to Seoul with a burning passion for justice. Basically, this prequel follows the standard case of the week police procedural format while delving into Park Yong-han's backstory, including his experiences during the war. By the way, since this show was licensed to Disney+, I decided to use the magical mouse washi from EXO Mama Plants. This one is in the color Forest Rainbow Red, though I think I should have gone with a more muted brown to match the posters. The deco stickers are from the Simply Gilded Dark Christmas Lanterns sheet, as I just wanted something more blue to match the second poster. Initially, I was apprehensive about watching this show. If you know me, you will know that I'm a completionist when it comes to dramas, and I was worried I would feel compelled to find all of the episodes of the original series before starting this, mainly because I was afraid I would need to see it to fully understand the prequel. But then I realized it's not practical, since most people likely haven't watched the original anyway, given that it aired so long ago and some of the episodes are considered lost media. And even if they are available, they are probably not subbed anyway. Thankfully though, my worries were unfounded. This show works well as a standalone series. The story is easy to follow and you can treat the characters as they are. A nice touch was the tribute to the original Park Yong-han with a guest appearance by Choi Bul-am as the 2024 version of the character. It felt like watching Park Yong-han age in real time. They also paid tribute to the original cast members who are no longer with us in the final scene, and it was so moving I almost cried. I find some of the cases to be interesting, especially the orphanage case, but some episodes felt a bit flat. The writing seems to be inconsistent. It felt like the show was written by multiple people and stitched together clumsily. The mid-series time jump also felt unnecessary, especially for a show with only 10 episodes. Overall though, it was still a decent watch and I gave it 8 out of 10. While this show serves as a prequel to a series I've never seen, the next one is a sequel to a show I've watched last year. What do you do when the posters for the show are primarily white? You use white origami paper for the decoration. To be fair, the white origami paper is slightly more yellow tone compared to the Archer and Olive paper, which leans towards a bluish white. So there's still some difference to help distinguish the decoration from the notebook itself. I cut the origami paper into 4 strips using my wavy edge scissors and pasted them on all 4 sides of the spread. The characters in both posters are wearing black as they look like they are preparing for a funeral. To match the somber atmosphere, I'm using the Swan Lake Landscape and Mysterious Pines washi tape from the Swan Lake subbox. I've mentioned that making mistakes or changing my mind has become a recurring theme throughout this video, and here I am doing it again. I ended up ripping off the decoration at the top part of the spread and replacing it with 2 new strips from another piece of white origami paper, this time cut with scallop edge scissors. They are positioned 1.5 cm away from the top to leave space for the washi tape above them. Honestly, I can't remember why I made this change, especially since I can't tell the difference between the before and after. This show is a continuation of season 1 of The Escape of the Seven, which I watched last year and talked about it in my previous media journal flip through. I was kind of surprised that season 2 came earlier than expected. I thought we would have to wait for a whole year to know what happens next. At this point, are you even surprised that I made another mistake? I did not measure out the spacing I need for the title again, so there wasn't enough room to write the word resurrection fully. To fix the mistake, I used correction tape to cover the word before pasting an offcut over it, since the origami paper is quite translucent, and look, it's as if the mistake wasn't there in the first place. Anyway, since this show is a continuation, it's hard not to mention key events from the first season, but I will try my best not to give any major spoilers. Briefly, season 1 revolves around a high school girl named Dami who was adopted by a couple that loved and cared for her deeply. One day, her biological mother reappears and takes her back. At first, Dami believes her mother is kind, but it turns out that she has a hidden agenda. Dami gets framed in a serious incident and the people around her don't believe her, especially when some of them lie to support the false narrative for their own benefit. The incident is then deliberately spread to go viral, leading to a massive public backlash, and it somehow culminates in Dami's death. Sometime later, there is an event that brings everyone who was complicit in her death together, and the survivors of that event are the 7 people referenced in the title. Many things happen along the way involving these 7 people, and season 2 continues their story, picking up right where we left off. Honestly, whenever I think of this show, I feel a sense of frustration and lament. This show was written by the queen of mahjong herself, Kim Sun-ok. Think of mahjong dramas as soap operas, but even more exaggerated and over the top, and that's exactly what Kim Sun-ok excels at, especially with her previous successes like Penthouse and Temptation of Wife, as well as my personal favourite, The Last Empress. While I did have some issues with Penthouse, even when things became outrageous, they still made sense in some way. Not for this show though, the over-the-top twists felt like they were written solely for the shock factor. After a while, the show became a long, nonsensical mess. I thought the main objective of the show was to avenge Dami's death, but as the show went on, it felt like an endless cycle of chasing after the villain. We already know how ruthless the 7 people can be, especially when they directly contributed to her death, and yet we are expected to sympathize with them, hope for their happy ending, and see them find love and family. They were literal monsters who bullied a high school girl to death for their own gain and left her defenseless. While they are shown to be redeeming themselves this season, I feel like they should have been made to live miserably for the rest of their lives, repenting their sins. In the end, I still give this 7.5 out of 10. It was ridiculous but still enjoyable for some reason. Maybe I'm just easily amused these days, because this next show is equally frustrating yet still entertaining. After so many mistakes setting up my maze spreads, here's something that finally feels like a success. I had a vision for this spread and I'm proud to say it turned out exactly the way I envisioned it. One of the posters for this show features a stage curtain backdrop, and recently Planning with K released a red curtain printable on Patreon to complement the movie sticker kit, making it the perfect time to use this printable. I'm pairing the printable with the red satin Stardust washi from Simply Gilded, which I'm putting at the top and bottom of the spread. I cut the printable into thirds and place them on the sides of the spread so that I have just enough space to write my review. This show is called The 8 Show, and it is about 8 people who are invited to appear on a reality TV show. It takes place at a studio with 8 stories, each assigned to a participant. To win the cash prize, all they have to do is stay there for a set period of time, but the catch is that anything they purchase, including necessities, is overinflated, and those expenses are deducted from the prize money. So if they spend a lot on necessities, their winnings will be significantly reduced. Soon, they discover that the rules are unfair, as some people enjoy more benefits than others. And a power struggle ensues as the participants try to navigate this extreme psychological game. I'm putting this house sticker from the Christmas tree deco sheet on this spread because it looks like the place they are staying at, or at least that's what I think. Anyway, wow, this show definitely blew my mind away. I felt like I couldn't breathe throughout because I kept getting shocked at every turn. There were moments that make you feel really frustrated, like the bad guys are really terrible, just scum. What's worse is that one of them is completely unaware or maybe pretends not to realize that what they're doing is wrong. Some parts were also hard to watch because they felt so violent, but for some reason I could not stop watching. I was too captivated. I don't even know exactly what it is about this show that just draws me in. I don't know if it's because the director and writer of this show also did the movie Emergency Declaration, which made my jaw drop the entire time. And that's the case for this show as well. The episodes just flew by, they were quick to watch and incredibly entertaining. I kept wanting to know what would happen next, though at the same time, I found myself confused by the ambiguous rules of the reality show. We don't really know what the point of the show is or who is behind it. In the end, I feel like maybe it's some kind of psychological experiment to see how people act when money is involved, how humanity feels when greed takes over, bringing out the worst in people. Apart from the shock factor, I also like how the opening credits were done. Usually we will skip the credits, but for this show, they changed for each episode as each one focuses on a different character. I like that we weren't given a lot of information about the characters up front, and we only learn more about them in their respective episodes. I don't even remember their names, even though they were revealed by the final episode. I just kept calling them by their floor numbers. Though some information about the reality show isn't revealed by the end, I still like the mysterious aspect of it. Overall, I gave this 9 out of 10, which is really high considering the lowest scores we've been seeing lately, but I think I'm on a streak of good luck because this next show is equally good. I noticed recently that many shows have been releasing more than one poster, or maybe I've just been actively looking for additional posters for some shows, and that is definitely the case with this show. One of the posters has a primarily blue background, while the other features a mostly yellow one. I wanted to incorporate both colors into my spread, so I'm using a blue and a yellow Japanese art inspired origami paper for the decoration. They are actually offcuts from previous spreads. The washi tapes are the Baby Chick Micro Dot and Spring Sky Micro Dot washi from Simply Gilded. This show is set in 2 time periods as it is a time traveling drama. The first timeline takes place in 1986, where our main character Ogawa, played by Abe Sadao, is from. He is a PE teacher who is known to be very crude in both his speech and behavior. In today's world, people might describe him as extremely inappropriate. However, in his era, his behavior is still socially acceptable, especially for men, even though some might still consider it as vulgar. Like, you know when something is wrong but was considered normal at that time? Despite his rough exterior, Ogawa is a concerned single father to a high school aged daughter, constantly worrying about her getting into some hanky-panky. One day, Ogawa somehow gets transported to the year 2024. Along the way, he meets several people, including Nagisa and Akitsu. Meanwhile, Sakae, a sociologist from 2024 and a champion of feminism, played by Yoshida Yo, travels back to 1986 with her son. She is completely flabbergasted by the openly sexist and crude attitudes of the era, and so begins this light-hearted, funny, time-traveling comedy as 2 starkly different personalities navigate eras completely at odds with their values. I finally remembered to take note of quotes from the show, and of course I had to include this one from Muchi, who is arguably my favorite character from the show because he's so funny. This quote is a testament to how silly he is as a character. The stickers on this spread are from the Charm Deco sheet, which I thought matched the overall light-hearted vibe of the show. Plus, I'm pretty pretty sure they ordered cream soda at the diner a few times, and the milkshake sticker just reminded me of that. In my previous media journal flip-throughs, I mentioned that one of my all-time favorite J-drama writers is Kudo Kankuro, who has written some of my favorite comedies, but his most recent dramas did not have that same spark as his earlier works, but I'm happy to report that he's back to what he does best. This show is reminiscent of his previous works with his signature chaotic random vibe. Though things may seem unpredictable at first, everything makes sense as the story progresses. Even potential plot holes are addressed in the end, showing a lot of thought went into making the show. I was initially afraid I would feel uncomfortable with the statements from the 80s, but I'm glad the show includes a disclaimer that it reflects that era and that they do not condone it. I also like how the show critiques the bad aspects of both eras, not just the 80s, like how people today are becoming less tolerant and are quick to label others, which makes people afraid of making mistakes. Instead, they could have communicated more clearly with each other, explaining why certain actions are wrong and how to do better. The casting was spot on. Abe Sadawo just radiates comedy, while Yoshida Yo feels very serious to me. I enjoyed Ogawa's character development. You would think a character like him is resistant to change, but he ends up actually learning from his mistakes, making his arc very wholesome. I also like how Junko, Ogawa's daughter, has a storyline of her own that mirrors the drama they're watching, though there was one plot that made me uncomfortable at first, but thankfully they resolved that early in the show. Overall, I ended up giving this a 9 out of 10. It was such a smooth watch that I ended up binging this in one sitting, even though I initially wanted to spread it out over a few days. I was so sure this would be my top show of the month until another time traveling drama completely stole my heart from the start to finish. I wasn't too sure about the direction I wanted to take for the decoration for this show, but since it gives off a very spring vibe, I decided to incorporate some of the spring colors from the posters. I'm using this floral origami paper with a white background just because I think it matches the overall vibe of the show, and I'm pairing it with the spring paisley rainbow gingham washi tape from Simply Gilded. These stickers you will see later are from the Lucky Charms deco sheet, which I thought matches the vibe of the spread. I wasn't planning to watch this show at first because the premise sounded meh and I wasn't familiar with the leads, but there was some controversy prior to its release, and being the nosy person I am, I had to watch it to see what the fuss was about and if the controversy was true. And oh my god, the thought of potentially missing out on this makes me so sad. It is such a precious gem that I want to protect at all costs. I thought I wouldn't be drawn to the plot because it involves idols, and I don't particularly follow any idol groups, so I thought I couldn't relate, but the plot turned out to be much more than that. Before I go on though, I want to warn that the show deals with some themes of self-harm and self-exit, so feel free to skip to the final flip through if this is triggering for you. So Lovely Runner, well actually the English title is kind of lame, like whatever. I thought this show was about sports, but no. It revolves around Im Sol, a huge fan of an idol group called Eclipse. After an accident leaves her wheelchair bound, she nearly loses hope until she hears a song by Eclipse on the radio, which gives her the strength to move on, and from that moment on, she becomes their biggest fan. After a concert, Im Sol is on her way home when she hears the tragic news that Sonjae, a member of the band who is also her bias, has taken his own life. Devastated, she somehow travels back in time 15 years as her younger self, where she meets a high school version of Sonjae. As with many time-traveling dramas, the person who travels back in time wants to prevent someone's death, which is also the case in this show. While Im Sol starts off trying to save Sonjae as a fan, they eventually fall in love with tragedy looming in the background. I was always behind on this show every week because I was too busy, but whenever I watched it, I felt so captivated. The romance was developed really nicely, it was not rushed. What often gets me in time-traveling dramas is how writers struggle to explain or resolve the time-traveling aspect, but this show did such a good job at managing the different timelines. It was tough for me to keep up with all the details, but I was impressed by how the writer kept everything consistent and connected. Just when I thought we kept going around in circles where Sol travels back in time, something happens, and then she returns to the present before going back again. The writer acknowledged it within the show, almost like they read my mind. I thought that was kind of funny. I feel it's been a while since I fell in love with an OST, but there was one song in this show that really tugged at my heartstrings. I played it on repeat for days and even cried to sleep listening to it. The song perfectly captures what the characters are going through and the emotions they feel. To think I almost missed out on this gem. It is always the simplest rom-coms, the ones that don't make you think too hard, that end up stealing your heart. I truly enjoyed this show from start to finish, even with a few minor issues. Even after so many months, I still can't stop thinking about it. Hence, I gave this a 9.5 out of 10, which makes it my top show show of the month. Let's update our TV show bracket, and with that, all our main spreads are done. Here's the final flip through. I'm so sorry that this video took so long to be released. I was just not in the right headspace lately, but I'm back and that's all that matters. Hopefully I can stay consistent next year. Despite the mistakes I made while setting up these spreads, I'm mostly happy with how they turned out. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got some inspiration for your own media journals. Let me know in the comments what shows you're currently watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.